I woke up from a 4-month coma, and the first thing my daughter said to me wasn't, "Thank God you're alive." It was, "Mom, I gave your house to my in-laws. I thought you weren't going to survive." And the worst part? She told me this looking me straight in the eye, without blinking, like someone casually mentioning it was going to rain. But I taught her a lesson she will never forget. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and leave a comment. Where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Margaret Miller. I am 57 years old, and for a long time, I thought I knew my daughter. I thought I knew exactly who that little girl was, the one I carried in my womb, the one I nursed, the one I raised alone after her father walked out on us when she was barely 3 years old. But I was wrong. Completely wrong. It all started on an ordinary April afternoon. I was at home, making dinner. I remember I was making that roast chicken with garlic and rosemary that my daughter, Emily, had loved since she was a kid. The smell filled the kitchen. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my head, as if someone had driven an ice pick right into the center of my skull. I tried to lean against the sink, but my legs didn't respond. I fell. The last sound I heard was the noise of my body hitting the cold kitchen tile. After that, everything went black. It wasn't like sleeping. It was as if I had been suddenly switched off, like when you unplug an appliance from the wall. 1 second I was there, conscious, alive. The next, I simply ceased to exist. What the doctors told me later is that I had a brain aneurysm. A ticking time bomb inside my head had finally exploded. My neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, heard the thud of my fall and called 911. If it weren't for her, I would have died right there on my kitchen floor, all alone. I was in a coma for 4 months, 122 days, to be exact. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. In the first few weeks, they actually called Emily to tell her she should prepare for the worst, that I probably wouldn't wake up, and if I did wake up, I would likely just be an empty shell, without memories, without consciousness. But they didn't know me. I have always been stubborn. My mother used to say I came into the world fighting, and I would go out the same way. And she was right. During those 4 months, I was trapped in a strange place. It wasn't total darkness. It was like floating in a gray fog, where sometimes I heard distant voices but couldn't understand what they were saying. Sometimes I felt touches on my hand, someone holding my fingers and squeezing gently. I wanted to respond. I wanted to squeeze back, but my body wouldn't obey. It was like being locked inside myself, screaming for help, but no one could hear me. There were moments when I thought I was dead, that gray fog was purgatory, or limbo, or whatever they call the place between life and death. But there was something pulling me back. A voice, always the same voice saying, "Don't give up, Mom, I need you." It was Emily, my daughter, my only reason to keep breathing after her father left. I clung to that voice like a castaway clings to a piece of driftwood in the middle of the ocean. She was my anchor, my reason to fight. And then, on an August morning, I woke up. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. I didn't gasp my eyes open and sit up in bed. It was gradual. First, I noticed I could hear the beeping of the machines more clearly, the hurried footsteps in the hallway, voices speaking softly. Then, I smelled it. Disinfectant, that characteristic hospital smell that sticks in your nostrils. I tried to move my fingers. It worked. A tiny movement, almost imperceptible, but it was there. My fingers obeyed. I tried to open my eyes. My eyelids felt as heavy as lead. But little by little, I managed. The light was too bright. Everything was blurry. I blinked several times until the shapes around me began to make sense. I was in a hospital room. There were tubes everywhere. In my arm, in my nose, in my throat. A nurse was checking something on a machine next to me. When she realized my eyes were open, she stopped. She froze for a second, mouth open. "Miss Miller?" Her voice was a whisper full of surprise. "Miss Miller, can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but there was a tube in my throat stopping me. I only managed to make a hoarse, almost animal sound. The nurse ran out of the room shouting for a doctor. In a few minutes, there were 3 people around me, checking my vitals, asking questions, shining flashlights in my eyes. A few more hours passed until they took the tube out of my throat. When I finally managed to speak, my voice came out weak, raspy, as if I had swallowed glass. "My daughter," I managed to say. "Where is my daughter?" The doctor, a man in his 40s with thin-rimmed glasses, smiled. "We already notified her. She should be arriving shortly." I lay there, waiting. My whole body hurt. Every muscle, every bone, as if I had been hit by a truck. But none of that mattered. I just wanted to see Emily. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to tell her everything was okay, that I had come back. 2 hours later, she appeared. She walked into the room with hurried steps, her hair in a messy ponytail, a large bag hanging from her shoulder. But there was something different about her. Something in her look. She didn't look relieved. She didn't look happy. She looked worried, but not in the right way. "Mom." She approached the bed but didn't touch me. She stood there with her arms crossed. "Thank God you woke up." I reached a trembling hand out to her. My baby." She looked at my hand, hesitated, and then held it. But it was a cold, mechanical touch. Like when you shake someone's hand out of politeness. But you don't really want to be there. "How do you feel?" "Weak," I admitted. "But I'm alive. I'm here." I smiled, even though it hurt to do so. "The doctors said it was a miracle." "Yeah, it was." She pulled up a chair and sat down, but kept her distance, as if she were afraid to get too close. "Mom, I need to tell you something." Something in her voice made me freeze on the inside. It wasn't the tone of someone about to give good news. What happened? She took a deep breath. She looked to the side, at the window, anywhere but at me. "In the first 2 months of your coma, the doctors said you weren't going to survive. They were very clear. They said it was a matter of time." I nodded slowly. "But I survived." "Yes, but back then, I didn't know you would survive." She finally looked me in the eyes, and that was where I saw it. That expression was guilt or fear, or both mixed together. I was desperate, Mom. No money, no options. Ryan's parents needed a place to live. They had just lost their house and my heart started beating faster. "Emily, what did you do?" "I gave them your house." The words came out of her mouth so naturally that for a moment I thought I had heard wrong. My brain was still confused. It was still rewiring itself after being shut down for 4 months. Maybe I had misunderstood. "What did you say?" Emily interlaced her fingers in her lap. She wasn't looking at me anymore. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, like a child who has just done something wrong and is waiting for the scolding. "I gave your house to Ryan's parents. They were renting after they lost their home, and their money was running out. I thought you weren't going to survive, Mom. The doctors were very clear." I tried to process what she was saying. My house. The house I bought with my own sweat after years of working as a seamstress. The house where I raised Emily alone. The house where every room held a memory, a story, a piece of me. You gave away my house? My voice came out louder than I intended. A nurse passed by the door and cast a curious glance but kept walking. "How could you? A house isn't a birthday present, Emily." "I know that." She finally raised her head. There were tears in her eyes. "I know, Mom, but I was desperate. The hospital bills were piling up every day. I needed help. Ryan's parents offered to help with the medical expenses in exchange for a place to live. And you thought you had the right to negotiate my house without my consent?" I felt the anger rising like bile in my throat. "That house is mine, Emily. Mine. I worked 20 years to pay for it. I know, Mom." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "But I didn't know what to do." "You were dying," the doctors said. "I don't care what the doctors said." My voice echoed in the room. "The house is still mine. You had no right." A nurse came running in. "Miss Miller, please, you need to calm down. Your blood pressure is spiking." I took a deep breath, trying to control the fury burning inside me. Emily was crying now, sobbing with her hands covering her face. And a part of me wanted to comfort her, wanted to tell her everything was okay. But the other part, the rational part, knew that nothing was okay. "Get out," I said quietly. Emily looked up. "What?" "Get out of my room. Now." "Mom, please, let me explain better. There is nothing to explain." I turned my face toward the wall. "You sold me out. You betrayed me while I was fighting for my life. Now get out. I heard the sound of the chair scraping against the floor, footsteps walking away, the door closing. And then, alone in that hospital room, I cried. I cried for everything I had lost. Not just the house, but the trust in the only person I thought would never hurt me. In the following days, I refused all of Emily's visits. She tried to come back 3 times, but I told the nurses to say I didn't want to see her. The doctors ran several tests. They said my recovery was going well, considering the time I spent in a coma. I would need physical therapy, neurological follow-up, but I would recover completely. Physically, maybe. Emotionally, that was another story. On the 5th day after waking up, I received a visit from a social worker. She was a young woman, not more than 30, with a kind smile and understanding eyes. She pulled up a chair and sat next to my bed. "Miss Miller, my name is Sarah. I'm here to help you with some practical matters regarding your discharge from the hospital." "When will I be discharged?" I asked. "In about 2 weeks, if everything goes well." She opened a folder she was holding. "But we need to talk about your housing situation. I understand there is a problem with your house." I laughed humorlessly. "Problem is a kind word. My daughter gave my house to her in-laws while I was in a coma." Sarah nodded slowly, as if she already knew. "And the house is in your name?" "Yes, solely in my name. I bought it alone. I paid for it alone. Every mortgage payment came from my work." "Then she didn't have legal authorization to do that." Sarah made some notes. "Do you want to take legal action?" I fell silent for a moment. Legal action against my own daughter? The idea was absurd. But at the same time, what she had done was also absurd. "I just want my house back. I understand. I'm going to put you in touch with a lawyer who can help. He does pro bono work for seniors in vulnerable situations." She handed me a card. "His name is Mr. Arthur Brooks. He is very good at what he does." I took the card with trembling hands. A lawyer. I would need a lawyer to settle this with my own daughter. The reality of that situation hit me with full force. 2 weeks later, I was discharged. Sarah had helped me find a temporary place to stay, a small room in a transitional housing facility that a charity maintained for people in emergency situations. It wasn't much. A tiny room with a twin bed, an old wardrobe, and a shared bathroom down the hall. But it was better than nothing. The day I left the hospital, Emily showed up. She was waiting at the entrance with her car. "Mom, let me give you a ride." "It's not necessary." I walked past her, leaning on the cane the physical therapists gave me. My body was still weak, my movements slow and careful. "Mom, please." She grabbed my arm. "At least let me help you with this." I pulled my arm away. "You've already helped me too much, Emily." I saw the pain in her eyes, but I didn't care. I got into the taxi Sarah had called for me and didn't look back. The room was in a neighborhood I didn't know, in a somewhat run-down part of the city. The streets were narrow, dirty, with trash piled up on the sidewalks. The building was old, with peeling paint and a strong smell of mildew rising from the stairs. When I opened the door to the room, I had to hold back tears. It was depressing. The walls had water stains. The bed had a thin mattress that sagged in the middle. The wardrobe was broken, with one door hanging by a hinge. But it was temporary, I told myself. It was just until I resolved the house situation. I sat on the bed, and the mattress groaned under my weight. I looked around that tiny space and felt a void in my chest. How had I ended up here? How had I fallen so low? My cell phone rang. It was Emily, for the 10th time that day. I hung up without answering. A few minutes later, she sent a text. "Mom, please, let me explain everything properly. Things aren't how you think." I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up the card Sarah gave me and called Mr. Brooks. A secretary answered and scheduled an appointment for the next day. That night, I barely slept. The mattress was uncomfortable. The room was hot and stuffy, and my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I thought about Emily when she was little. I remembered her smile when she lost her first tooth, the pride in her eyes when she learned to ride a bike, the tight hug she gave me on her graduation day. Where did I go wrong? What did I do to deserve this? The next day, I went to Mr. Brooks's office. It was a modest place, in an older commercial building downtown. The waiting room had plastic chairs and old magazines stacked on a small table. I sat and waited, observing other people who were also waiting. Everyone looked tired, defeated. Miss Miller? A woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun, called me. Mr. Brooks will see you now. I stood up with difficulty, leaning on my cane, and followed her to a small office in the back. Mr. Brooks was a man in his 60s, with a gray beard and kind eyes. He stood up when I entered and extended his hand. Miss Miller, a pleasure to meet you. Please, sit down. I sat in the chair across from his desk. He went back to his seat and opened a file. Sarah told me a little about your case, but I'd like to hear it directly from you, in your own words. And so I told him everything. From the day I suffered the aneurysm to the moment I woke up and discovered my daughter had given my house to her in-laws. He listened in silence, making notes every now and then, nodding his head. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Miss Miller, what your daughter did is illegal. She didn't have authorization to dispose of your property. Is the house registered solely in your name? Yes, only in my name. Then it's simple. We can initiate an unlawful detainer lawsuit to recover possession. We're going to need some documents. The deed to the house, official ID, maybe witness statements. He grabbed a notepad and started writing. It would also be useful to know exactly what kind of agreement your daughter made with the in-laws. Was it verbal? Written? I don't know. She didn't give me details. I'm going to need you to try to get that information. He handed me the notepad with a list. And we also need to act fast. The longer those people stay in your house, the harder it will be to get them out. I left the office with the list in my hand and a huge weight on my heart. I would have to talk to Emily. There was no other option. I sat on a bench in the park across from the building and finally returned one of her thousands of calls. She answered on the first ring. Mom. Her voice was thick with relief. Thank God. I was so worried. I need to talk to you. I cut her off. In person. Yes, of course. Where are you? I'll come get you. You don't need to come get me. Meet me at the coffee shop on the corner of Main Street and 4th Avenue. Do you know it? Yes, I know it. When? Now. There was a pause. Okay. I'm leaving now. I hung up and started walking slowly toward the coffee shop. Every step hurt. My body was still recovering. Muscles weak after months without use. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain. I arrived at the coffee shop and chose a table in the back. I ordered just a glass of water. I wasn't hungry. I didn't have the stomach to eat anything. Emily arrived 20 minutes later. She walked in hurriedly, eyes red and puffy. She had lost weight. She had deep, dark circles. She saw me and almost ran to the table. Mom. She sat down and reached out her hands, but I kept mine in my lap. Mom, I am so sorry. So much. I need information, I said, keeping my voice steady. What kind of agreement did you make with Ryan's parents? She blinked, surprised by my coldness. Agreement? Yes. Was it verbal? Written? Did they pay anything? Emily played nervously with her fingernails. It was. It was something informal. Ryan's parents offered to pay the hospital bills. It was over $200,000, Mom. I had no way to pay. They said if I let them live in the house for a while, they would take care of everything. And did you sign anything? Not exactly. We just agreed. Agreed. I repeated the word like it was poison. And you didn't think you should wait for me to wake up? You didn't think maybe I would have an opinion on what to do with my own house? Mom, the doctor said you weren't going to wake up. Her voice rose. People at other tables looked over at us. They were very clear. They said it was a matter of days, maybe weeks. I had to make a decision, a wrong decision. I grabbed my cane and started to stand up. I hired a lawyer, Emily. I'm going to file a lawsuit to get my house back. Her face went pale. You can't do that. Yes, I can. And I will. Mom, Ryan's parents already invested money in the house. They did renovations, bought new furniture. If you kick them out now, I don't care. I started walking toward the door. That house is mine, and I'm going to get it back, even if it's the last thing I do. Mom, wait. Emily came after me. Please, let's talk about this. There has to be another solution. I stopped and turned around. The only solution is for them to get out of my house. The sooner, the better. What if we make a deal? They can pay rent for a few months until they find another place. I don't want their money. I want my house. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back, even hearing Emily calling me. I took a bus back to my room. During the ride, I looked out the window without really seeing anything. My mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about how things had changed so fast. A few months ago, I had a normal life, a comfortable house, a daughter I trusted. And now? Now, I was alone, living in a depressing cubicle, fighting in court against the only family I had left. When I got to the room, I sat on the bed and finally let the tears come. I cried for everything I had lost. I cried for the betrayal. I cried for the loneliness. I cried until I had no more tears. My cell phone rang again. It was Emily. This time I answered. "Mom, please." Her voice was broken. "Don't do this. Let's find a solution together." "The solution is simple, Emily. Tell your in-laws to get out of my house. They have nowhere to go. That's not my problem." My voice was cold, hard. Even I didn't recognize the tone I was using. They weren't my problem when they went into my house. They aren't now. "Mom, you're not understanding. They sold their house to pay debts. They spent all the money they had helping me with your hospital bills. If you kick them out on the street now..." "I'm not kicking anyone out on the street. I am simply taking back what is mine." I hung up before she could respond. In the following days, I worked with Mr. Brooks to gather all the necessary paperwork. It was harder than I imagined. The deed to the house was kept in a safety deposit box at the bank, but I needed to go personally to get it. My body was still weak. Every movement was an effort, but I was determined. Mr. Brooks initiated the eviction lawsuit. He also included a request for a court order for the occupants to vacate the property immediately. He explained to me that the process could take a few months, but that with the paperwork in order, I had high chances of winning. While we waited for the court's decision, I started doing physical therapy. 3 times a week, I took 2 buses to a public clinic where they treated me for free. It was tiring, painful, but necessary. I needed to regain my strength. I needed to be ready for when I returned to my house. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult physical therapy session, I returned to my room and found Emily waiting for me at the door. She was sitting on the hallway floor, head resting on her knees. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She lifted her face. She had been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy. "I needed to see you. You don't answer my calls, you don't reply to my texts, because I have nothing to talk to you about." "Mom, please." She stood up. "I know I messed up. I know I did the wrong thing. But you need to understand I was desperate. I didn't know what to do. I opened the door to the room. You could have waited. You could have trusted that I was going to wake up," the doctor said. "I don't care what the doctor said." My voice echoed in the narrow hallway. "You are my daughter, Emily. You should have fought for me, not negotiated my house behind my back." I went in and tried to close the door, but she put her foot in the way. "I fought for you. I stayed at the hospital every day for the first 2 months. I only left to work and came running back. I spent all my savings paying part of the bills before accepting help from Ryan's parents. And you thought that gave you the right to give away my house? I thought you were going to die," she screamed. Tears ran down her face. "I thought you were never going to wake up again. The doctors said there was nothing else to be done, that it was just a matter of time. I needed to make decisions, Mom. Someone needed to make decisions. Decisions about my life, my assets, without my consent." I pulled the door, forcing her to remove her foot. "Now get out of here, Emily. I don't want to talk to you anymore." "Mom." I slammed the door in her face. I heard the sobs on the other side, the footsteps walking away, and then silence. I sat on the bed and held my head in my hands. A part of me wanted to open the door, wanted to call Emily back, wanted to hug her and tell her everything was okay, that I understood, that I forgave her. But I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe never. 2 weeks later, I received the news that the judge had granted the eviction order. The occupants of the house had 10 days to vacate the property. If they didn't do so voluntarily, the sheriff would execute the forced eviction. When Mr. Brooks gave me the news over the phone, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. "Congratulations, Miss Miller," he said. You are going to get your house back. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Truly. I hung up and sat on the bed looking at my phone. I knew I needed to warn Emily. It was the least I could do. I sent a short text. The judge gave the order. They have 10 days to leave. The reply came in less than a minute. Mom, please, reconsider this. Let's talk. I didn't reply. In the following days, Emily tried to call me dozens of times. She sent endless texts. She showed up twice at the housing facility, but I didn't open the door. Finally, on the 8th day, she sent a different message. Ryan's parents are packing their things. They are going to leave before the police come. But Mom, I need you to know, you are destroying my family. Ryan is furious with me. His parents aren't speaking to me. And you don't even care anymore. I read the message several times. I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered the betrayal. I remembered waking up from the coma and discovering that everything I had built had been handed over to strangers. And the guilt disappeared. On the 10th day, Mr. Brooks called me. Miss Miller, I received confirmation that the property has been vacated. You can return to your home. My heart raced. My house. I was going back to my house. I took a taxi there. During the ride, I was nervous. How would the house be? What had they done with my furniture? With my things? When the taxi stopped in front of the driveway, I paid the driver and got out slowly. The house looked the same on the outside. The same light blue paint, the same windows with white trim. But something was different. I opened the gate. It was unlocked. I walked to the front door, also unlocked. I pushed it and went in. And then I stopped. The house was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of everything. Furniture, appliances, curtains, pictures. Even the light bulbs had been removed. I walked through the living room in shock. My sofa wasn't there. My dining set had disappeared. I went to the kitchen, the stove, the refrigerator, the microwave. Everything had been taken. I went into my bedroom. The bed was gone. The dresser, too. Even the mirror that hung on the wall was missing. I felt my legs give way. I leaned against the wall and slid down to the floor. They took everything. Absolutely everything. I picked up my phone with trembling hands and called Emily. She answered on the 3rd ring. Mom, where are my things? My voice came out as a low growl. Where is everything? There was silence on the other end. Then she spoke, and her voice was strangely calm. Ryan's parents took it. They said everything in the house was theirs, that they had bought it. Lies, I shouted. That was my furniture. My things. I bought all that years before you even met that husband of yours. Mom, they have the receipts. They prove they bought everything in the last few months. They remodeled the whole house. They put in new furniture, appliances. And my old furniture? Where is it? More silence. They threw it away. They said it was too old, that it wasn't usable anymore. I felt as if a knife had been driven into my chest. My sofa, where I sat with Emily when she was a baby. My table, where we shared thousands of meals. My bed, where I slept alone for all these years. Everything had been thrown in the trash as if it were garbage. How did you let this happen? I whispered. I tried to stop it, Mom. I swear I tried. But they were so angry. They say you destroyed their life. That they spent over $30,000 on the house, thinking they were going to live there permanently. They didn't have permission to spend anything. I stood up with difficulty, leaning against the wall. They didn't have permission to be here in the first place. I gave them permission. Mom, I gave it to them. You didn't have the right. I know, she screamed back. I know I didn't. But it's done. I can't go back. And you? You are just making everything worse. I hung up in her face. I sat on the empty living room floor and looked around. Bare walls, empty floor, echoing when I moved. The house I loved so much, the house I fought so hard to get back, was gutted. I spent that night on the living room floor using my jacket as a pillow. I had nowhere to go. I didn't have the rental room anymore. I had given it up as soon as I knew I could go home. And I didn't have money to buy new furniture. My entire paycheck had gone to paying the accumulated bills from the months I was in a coma. The next day, I called Mr. Brooks and told him what had happened. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "That is destruction of property and theft. We can sue. How long will it take? Months? Maybe years. And in the meantime, how am I going to live? He sighed. I'm going to see if I can connect you with some charities that can donate used furniture. That's what he did. Over the next few weeks, volunteers from various organizations started bringing things for my house. An old sofa with stains, a twin bed with a sagging mattress, a small table with a wobbly leg that needed to be propped up with a piece of cardboard. It wasn't much, but it was better than the empty floor. Emily tried to visit me twice. Both times, I didn't open the door. She stood outside pleading, crying, saying she was sorry. But I didn't open it. I couldn't look at her face without feeling rage. A month after returning home, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered hesitantly. Hello? Margaret Miller? It was a man's voice, gruff, irritated. This is Frank, Ryan's father. My whole body tensed. What do you want? I want you to know that you are ruining my family's life. My wife is having anxiety attacks. We are living in a tiny apartment, cramped, with no money. That is not my fault. Of course it is, he shouted. You kicked us out of the house. We lost everything we invested. You shouldn't have invested anything. I kept my voice steady. That house was never yours. Emily gave us the house. She is your daughter. She had every right. No, she didn't. And if you had a shred of decency, you would have waited for me to wake up to talk about it. You were dying, but I didn't die. I smiled humorlessly. Surprise, he hung up on me. But that call wasn't the last. In the following days, I received more calls. Some from Frank, others from his wife, Linda, and some, surprisingly, from Ryan himself. Miss Miller, please, he would say. My parents are feeling sick. My mom can't sleep. My dad developed gastritis from so much stress, all because of you. It is not because of me. It is because of the decisions they made. They were just trying to help. Helping would be respecting my property, not taking possession of it. Eventually, I blocked all their numbers. But the damage was done. Every call left me more irritated, more convinced I had done the right thing by kicking them out. And Emily? Emily stopped trying after a while. The calls ceased, the texts stopped, and I should have felt relieved, but I didn't feel that. I felt an even greater emptiness. 2 months after returning home, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard knocking at the door. I thought about ignoring it, but the knocking continued, insistent. Finally, I went and opened it. It was a woman I didn't know. She was about 40, short brown hair, wearing a business suit. Margaret Miller? Yes. She handed me an envelope. You've been served. Have a nice day. Before I could ask anything, she had already turned around and walked away. I closed the door and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were legal documents. I read quickly, and my heart sank. It was a lawsuit. Frank and Linda were suing me. They alleged they had a verbal agreement with Emily, that they invested money in good faith in the property, and that I should reimburse them for all expenses. They were asking for $50,000. $50,000. I sat on the crooked kitchen chair and held the documents with shaking hands. I didn't have that money. I didn't even have 10% of that. If they won the lawsuit, I would lose everything. The house, the little I had managed to rebuild, everything. I called Mr. Brooks immediately. He told me not to worry, that it was just an intimidation tactic, that they didn't have a case. But I worried. I worried for days, for weeks. And then, on a cold September night, as I sat alone in the empty living room, staring at the peeling walls, something inside me shifted. It wasn't sudden, it was gradual, like a tide rising slowly until it covers the sand. I was tired of being a victim, tired of letting people take everything from me while I stood there, passive, barely reacting. It was Emily who started this. But I didn't need to let her, or anyone else, continue controlling my life. If they wanted war, I would give them war. The next morning, I went back to Mr. Brooks's office. This time, I didn't go to cry or ask for help. I went with a plan. He greeted me with the same kind smile as always and offered me coffee. I declined. I wasn't there for pleasantries. Mr. Brooks, I want to sue my daughter. He blinked, surprised. Sue? Yes, for breach of trust and fraud. She handed over my house without my authorization. That is a crime. Miss Miller, are you sure? Suing your own daughter? I am absolutely sure. My voice was steady. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. And I need to protect myself. If those in-laws of hers win the lawsuit against me, I'm going to lose everything. Mr. Brooks was silent for a moment, studying my face. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I will prepare the documents, but you must understand that this will completely destroy the relationship between the two of you. The relationship is already destroyed. I stood up. Now I am just protecting what is mine. The lawsuit was filed a week later. Emily received the notice and immediately called me. I answered, for the first time in weeks. How could you do this? She was crying. How could you sue me? I'm your daughter, and you are the one who gave away my house without my permission. I was trying to help you. Helping would be asking what I wanted, not deciding for me. I took a deep breath. Emily, you betrayed me, and now you have to deal with the consequences. Are you going to send me to jail? Is that what you want? To destroy my life? I felt a tightening in my chest, but I kept my voice firm. I want justice. If that means you pay for what you did, then yes. She hung up, and this time she didn't call back. She didn't send texts. Total silence. In the following months, 2 trials ran simultaneously. The one Frank and Linda brought against me asking for reimbursement, and the one I brought against Emily for breach of trust. It was months of hearings, of statements, of endless paperwork. Months of stress that made me lose weight, lose sleep, lose the few hairs that hadn't turned gray yet. During all this time, I didn't see Emily in person, just at the hearings, where she sat on the opposite side of the room, avoiding my gaze. She had gotten thinner too, deep circles under her eyes, clothes that seemed too big for her. In one of the hearings, her lawyer tried to argue that she acted in good faith, believing genuinely that I wouldn't survive. They presented medical reports from the first months of my coma, where the doctors indeed gave low odds of recovery. But Mr. Brooks countered that this didn't give her the legal right to dispose of my property, that she should have waited for the legal certainty of my death before making any decisions, and that, even so, the house was part of an estate that would have to go through probate. It was a long and painful process. But finally, after 8 months, the first verdict came out. The judge denied Frank and Linda's petition. He determined that they had no right to reimbursement because they knew, or should have known, that they were occupying a property without legal authorization from the owner. When Mr. Wader Brooks called me with the news, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Are they going to appeal? I asked. Probably, but the chances of overturning this decision are minimal. A month later, the verdict of the lawsuit against Emily came out. The judge convicted her of breach of trust. The sentence was 2 years in prison, but commuted to community service and a fine, since it was her first offense. She would have to work 3 times a week at a charity and pay a $5,000 fine. When I read the sentence, I didn't feel victory. I felt a deep emptiness. My daughter had been convicted. Because of me. Or rather because of herself. But still, I was part of this. That night, I sat on the donated sofa and looked at the photos that still remained. Photos of Emily as a little girl. Emily at school. Emily graduating. Emily on her wedding day. All memories of a life that seemed to belong to another person now. I picked up my phone. I hesitated. Then I wrote. I saw the sentence. I am very sorry we reached this point. She took 3 hours to reply. Me too. And that was it. Neither of us knew what else to say. 3 months passed. Little by little, I managed to buy some better furniture. Nothing fancy, but functional. A sofa without stains. A bed with a decent mattress. A dining table that didn't need cardboard under the leg. The house started to look like a home again. Different from what it was before, but still, mine. I went back to working as a seamstress, accepting small alterations that the neighbors brought. It wasn't much, but it helped pay the bills. And Emily? I saw her once, from afar, when I went to the supermarket. She was with Ryan, pushing a cart. They didn't see me, or pretended not to see me. I don't know. I stood there, watching my daughter from a distance, and I felt a painful longing for how things were, for how they could have been, but I didn't approach. I wasn't ready yet. One afternoon in December, almost a year after waking up from the coma, I received a letter. It wasn't a legal notice. It was a handwritten letter. I recognized Emily's handwriting immediately. I opened it with trembling hands and read, "Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I hurt you in a way that maybe can never be repaired, but I need you to know. I think about you every day. I regret it every day. If I could turn back time, I would do everything differently. I would wait. I would trust. I would fight harder. But I can't go back. I can only move forward. And I hope, someday, you can forgive me. Not because I deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Love, Emily." I held the letter for a long time. I read and reread it several times. And then, finally, I picked up a pen and paper and started writing my reply. "Emily, I received your letter, and I need to be honest with you. I still don't know if I can forgive. The pain I felt when I discovered what you did was so great that it is still here, inside me, like a wound that won't heal completely. But I also need to admit that I miss you. I miss talking to you, laughing with you, being your mom. Maybe we can't go back to what we were. Maybe that is lost forever. But maybe we can build something new, something different, something more honest. If you want to try, I want to too. Margaret." I put the letter in the mail the next day. And then I waited. 3 days later, Emily appeared at my door. She was nervous, wringing her hands, biting her lip. "Mom, can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looking around, seeing the new furniture. Or rather, less old. The walls I had painted myself, the small details showing that I was trying to rebuild my life. "It looks nice," she said quietly. "It's a work in progress." I went to the kitchen. "Do you want coffee?" "Yes, please." I made the coffee in silence. She sat at the new table. A simple wooden table I bought at a thrift store. When I placed the mug in front of her, our hands touched for a second. It was brief, but it was something. We sat in silence for a few minutes, just drinking coffee. Then Emily spoke. "Mom, I know I already apologized, but I need to ask again. From the bottom of my heart, I was wrong. I was so wrong. You were wrong. It made no sense to deny it, but I was also wrong about some things." She raised her eyes, surprised. "How?" "I could have tried to understand your situation better. I could have listened to you more before reacting with so much anger." I turned the mug in my hands. "I'm not saying what you did was right. It wasn't. But I also could have dealt with it differently. No, Mom, you had every right to be angry. I took your house, your security, everything. You took from me. But I also took something from you by suing you. Your peace of mind, your clean record." I looked at her. "And for that, I am also sorry." We fell silent again. A more comfortable silence this time, less charged. "How are you doing?" I asked finally. "With the community service and everything else? It's being educational." She smiled weakly. "I work at a nursing home. I help take care of people who were abandoned by their families. And every time I look at them, I think of you. I think about how I almost abandoned you." I felt a lump in my throat. "You didn't abandon me, Em. You made a mistake. A big mistake. But still, a mistake. A mistake that almost cost everything. But it didn't." I reached my hand across the table. She hesitated. Then she put hers on top of mine. "We are still here. We can still fix this." She squeezed my hand and started to cry. "I missed you so much, Mom. I missed you too." We cried together. And it was the first time in over a year that I felt that maybe, just maybe, things could be okay again. Emily started visiting me once a week. At first, the visits were short, awkward, superficial conversations about the weather, work, nothing important. But little by little, we started opening up. She told me about how her marriage was suffering. Ryan blamed her for the situation with his parents. They fought constantly. They were thinking about couples therapy. I told her about how hard it was starting over at 57, about how my body still ached from the months in a coma, about how sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night, afraid that it was all just a dream and I was still trapped in that gray fog. And slowly, very slowly, we began to heal. One day, Emily showed up with a box. I brought some things I found in Ryan's parents' storage unit. They're yours. Things they kept before throwing your furniture away. I opened the box and inside I found photos. Old photos from when Emily was a baby, from when she was 5 and lost her first tooth, from when she graduated from school, photos I thought I had lost forever. I held a photo where she was in my arms, still a newborn, and the tears came. "Thank you," I managed to say, "for bringing this back. I should have brought it sooner. I should have stopped them from throwing your things away." She sat next to me. But at that time, I was so confused, so torn between you and Ryan, between doing the right thing and keeping my family. And now? Are you still torn? Now I know that doing the right thing and keeping my family don't have to be mutually exclusive. She took my hand. "My family is you, Mom. You always were. And I almost lost that." We spent that afternoon looking at photos together, remembering, laughing, crying, healing. And when she left that night, she hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, daughter." Weeks turned into months. Our relationship grew stronger. It wasn't like before. It never would be. But it was something new. Something that had been tested, broken, and rebuilt stronger. One day, Emily invited me to lunch at a restaurant. When I arrived, I saw it wasn't just her. Ryan was there too. I tensed up immediately. I didn't know he would be coming. "Mom, please, sit down. We need to talk. All three of us." I sat down suspiciously. Ryan looked uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. Finally, he took a deep breath and spoke. "Miss Miller, I wanted to apologize for what my parents did, for the way they treated you. You don't need to apologize for your parents." "Yes, I do, because I supported them. I knew what they were doing and didn't try to stop it." He finally looked at me. "I put my family of origin above my wife and my mother-in-law. And that was wrong." I stayed silent, processing. "And your parents? Do they know you are here?" "They know. And they aren't happy. But I needed to do this. I needed to try to fix things." "Fix," I repeated the word. "I don't know if it can be fixed, Ryan, but maybe we can move forward." He nodded. "That's all I'm asking, a chance to start over." I looked at Emily. She was teary-eyed, hopeful. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's try." That lunch was a turning point. It didn't solve everything instantly, far from it, but it opened a door, a possibility of healing that I thought was closed forever. Ryan started coming with her, and Emily on the weekly visits. At first, it was strange, tense, but little by little we found a rhythm, a way to coexist that didn't require pretending nothing had happened, but that allowed us to move forward anyway. His parents, Frank and Linda, never reached out to me directly. They never apologized, and I didn't expect them to. Some wounds are too deep to heal completely, and that's okay. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need explanations. I had already found my peace. 6 months after that lunch, Emily appeared at my door with a huge smile. "Mom, I have news. Good or bad?" "Good. Very good." She took my hand. "I'm pregnant." My heart stopped for a second, then it soared. "Pregnant? Really? Really?" 3 months along, I wanted to be sure everything was okay before telling you. I hugged my daughter tightly. A new life, a new beginning, a grandson or granddaughter I almost didn't get to know. I am so happy for you. I want you to be very present in his or her life. Emily pulled away and looked me in the eyes. I want my child to have the grandmother I almost lost. And that was when I realized I had won. Not because I kicked people out of my house, not because I won lawsuits, but because I survived. Because I refused to be a victim. Because I fought for what was mine and, in the process, learned to forgive too. My grandson was born on a rainy March morning. A beautiful boy, with dark eyes like Emily's. They named him Noah. When I held him for the first time, so small and fragile in my arms, I felt that everything had been worth it. All the pain, all the struggle, all the loss, because there was the future, a new generation, a new chance to do things right. Today, 2 years after waking up from the coma, my life is completely different. I still live in the same house. I still work as a seamstress. But I learned some important things along the way. I learned that family isn't who is always by your side. It's who stays even after the mistakes. Who fights to fix it when it breaks. Who chooses to stay even when it would be easier to leave. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go of the weight you carry. It means choosing peace instead of anger. But it also means setting boundaries, protecting yourself, never allowing yourself to be hurt in the same way again. I learned that strength isn't never falling. It's getting up every time you fall. It's continuing when everything seems lost. It's fighting for what is yours, even when everyone is against you. And I learned that life is much more fragile than we imagine. That we can fall asleep today and wake up in a completely different world tomorrow. That we need to value what we have while we have it, because we never know when everything can change. Emily visits me every week now, usually with Noah. I watch my grandson grow. I see him take his first steps in the same living room where my daughter took hers. I see life continuing, even after everything. And when I look back at everything that happened, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel gratitude. Gratitude for having woken up, for having fought, for having survived. Some people ask me if I really forgave Emily, and the honest answer is, I am in the process. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a choice you make every day, choosing to let go, choosing to rebuild, choosing to love, despite the pain. Some days are easier than others. Some days I look at my daughter and see only the woman who betrayed me. Other days, I see the girl I raised alone, who made a terrible mistake, but who is trying to fix it. And on the good days, which are becoming more frequent, I see both, and I accept both. Because people aren't one-dimensional. We aren't just our mistakes, or just our successes. We are the sum of everything, of the good and bad decisions, of the moments of strength and the moments of weakness. And if I learned anything from all this, it's that it's worth fighting. It's worth defending yourself. It's worth demanding respect, even from the people you love, especially from the people you love. Because love without respect isn't love. It is dependency. It is accepting crumbs when you deserve the whole loaf. So, if you are going through something similar, if someone you love betrayed you, hurt you, took advantage of your vulnerability, I want you to know you don't need to accept it. You don't need to forgive immediately. You don't need to make peace just to keep the peace. You have the right to be angry, to fight for what is yours, to set firm boundaries. And you also have the right, when you are ready, to forgive, to rebuild, to give a second chance. But on your terms, in your way, in your time. My name is Margaret Miller. I am 59 years old now. I woke up from a coma and discovered I had lost everything. But I fought. And I won. Not perfectly, not without scars, but I won. And if I could, you can too. Remember, you are stronger than you imagine, more resilient than you think, and you deserve much more than crumbs. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe. And tell me in the comments which part left your jaw on the floor. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't upload here. I'll see you there.